All right, let's try this again. Attempt two. Thank y'all who are still here and who join in, hopefully, going forward. Apologize for that. We were dealing with some technical difficulties behind the scenes. So hopefully this will take care of that. Thank you to those who were pointing it out. And hopefully we'll be able to have a smooth ride the last 40 minutes or so of the show. So thank you for those who pointed out, and thank you, Kenny, behind the scenes for helping me with all of this. And hopefully it's a smooth sailing the rest of the way out through here. Picking up where I believe I left off, the NBA Finals going on right now. I mentioned it was halftime, and it was a pretty close game, but that how differently each team had been showing up today with the sort of top-heavy offensive performance from the from the Dallas Mavericks, as opposed to the much more sort of spreading the rock that we're seeing from Boston, and Boston's being crisp from the free throw shooting, as opposed to Dallas having some very strong difficulties with that thus far. It was just interesting to me to kind of see how these two teams, even though the score was almost tied, how vastly different these two games have been played, meaning these two teams who have been playing today, how different the game has been on each of their sides. So, but looking forward to seeing how that kicks off. And as I mentioned before, we will continue to have scoring updates of that game as well throughout the rest of the game, or throughout the rest of the show. And and a couple of people who were asking about what was going on with the score with regard to New York. It was a Trent Grisham home run that put New York ahead. So hopefully that will be an opportunity for fans who have been so critical of Trent Grisham to perhaps hopefully have him fall back into favor with them a little bit, because he definitely has shown up a little bit the last week or two in some ways that I don't know if he's getting enough credit for, considering the amount of flack that he has taken. Because looking at what he's done, and again, this is not a guy who's going to be confused with somebody who should be starting 150 games on a World Series caliber team. That's not what I'm saying, and that was not what he came over from San Diego to accomplish. But on the flip side of that, you also have role players, if you want to call them that, and that's still an important place to be in baseball. It's not just your starting nine who are going to be making an impact. I mean, plenty of guys. Plenty of big moments in World Series or playoff history have been from guys who were not the star of a team, or were not the number one player on a team, and you need those guys to come up in big moments and contribute. So if Grisham is able to do what he did a couple of days ago and do what he did tonight with that home run right when they needed it in that game, and if he's able to play the defense and contribute the sort of the my apologies, y'all got still having some technical issues in the back here, but no, but even off of like I said, with what he's been doing, even though he had been struggling with some other areas, the fact that he's still able to produce, and again, that was obviously a big moment. He came in a big moment a couple of days ago. He's been good in that sort of small ball situation, in terms of bunting, sacrificing, etc. So it's that really is interesting to me, because it reminds me a little bit of last year with guys like Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, whom I was a fan of his, and I think a lot of Yankees fans started to turn around on him, meaning turn favorable toward him toward the end, because I know he was an easy punching bag for fans for a long period of time during his somewhat brief tenure in New York. But for whatever you can say about his the fact that he was out of position, playing it short when he should have been at third, or one thing or another, or the fact that he tended to not be super consistent at the plate, whatever you want to say about it, for the 2-ish years that he was on the team, if you needed a big hit, more often than not, he was the guy, or one of the guys that you wanted up. And so, and I think that what you're seeing now, I'm not saying that necessarily he's playing the same role, but I think he's got a similar sort of identity that he's building in New York, where he's not necessarily going to be the guy who is going to get you the huge production, game after game after game. But when you put him up, he's going to be there for you, and he's going to be there for you in not necessarily in the ways that you would count on a Judge or somebody like that, but he's played an important role these last couple of weeks, and again, you're going to need it's and the fact that Soto is down. I hate the fact that Soto got injured, but this may actually be an opportunity for them to see, okay, this is a really not the same team without Soto. So we're going to have to figure out when we don't have somebody like Soto or when we don't have somebody like Judge, when we can't rely on the same two guys every night, where are we going to get this production from and how are we going to get it? Because we're not going to have, Oswaldo Cabrera up there hitting 300, taking 120 walks, and working 9 pitches off of every at bat. We're not going to have Gleyber Torres up there, hitting 50 home runs like Judge will. So when you're not getting these guys at their peak, which you have to account for the fact that you're going to have to win games without having both of these guys constantly red hot. So in the face of having to do that, you've got to figure out where this is going to come from. So guys like Grisham stepping up like he did tonight and like he did in San Francisco, guys like, Verdugo stepping up, guys like, I mentioned Cabrera, guys like Trevino, who finally started to get his groove back offensively recently. These are going to be things that are important. This is what's going to make the difference between the Yankees being a scorching hot team and a team that's going to finally be able to get the job done in October. Kurt says, "What's up? What's up, Scoops? How you doing, Kurt? Good to see you. And I hope you had a great week. I was able to catch a little bit of the content this past week. One at bat, game 7. Who do you want up, Judge or Soto? Right now, I would have to say Soto, because I think that just as a standalone hitter, even though I'll put it this way. I think Judge's ceiling is higher, but I think Soto, for what his ceiling is, I think I believe more that he'll get to it. I'll put it that way. Judge at his best, I think, is the best hitter in baseball, but Soto, I think, is the more consistent. It's the fact that you've got a situation there where you've got Soto down. Hopefully not for the long term, but I'll be curious to see how this affects not just the team, but specifically Judge, because I made that comment last week about how I thought that Judge and Soto were both having such elite seasons offensively because they were playing off each other's games and playing to each other's strengths. So without Soto there, whether that's God willing, hopefully this is the last game that's the case, but whether it's just today, whether it's tomorrow, whether it's middle of the next series, whatever it is, I'll be curious to see if Judge is able to not necessarily keep things going, because we know he can as the captain and what he's been. He's literally a historic, one of the great Yankee hitters already of modern times since the Mickey Mantle days and such. But on top of that, you have to look at guys like looking around the team, and even if he is able to maintain that, people are going to have to step up in his stead. The more interesting thing, I think, to look at, not just now but going forward, is so we talked about in the past, we've talked about Garrett Cole's injury. He just did his second rehab start. He's combined for 8 innings. He's pitched fantastic in both of his rehab appearances. He's expected to need at least one more before he returns to the rotation. So I'm still not expecting that he's going to be back in New York until probably the penultimate week in June, or maybe the last week in June. But it's still going to be really interesting to me to see what they do in the rotation when he returns, because as of right now, I think the obvious one, now that Schmidt went down, would be to send Poteet to the bullpen. But I still am kind of wondering if you might still consider doing Cortez. I hope that, I'll put it this way, Luis Gil being out of the rotation should be a completely off the table as a discussion at this point. Whether Schmidt comes back, whether Poteet, depending on regardless of how he's playing, and when Cole comes back, Luis Gil coming out of the rotation or going to the bullpen or whatever the case may be, I don't want to hear that being a topic of conversation anymore when it comes to New York this season. This is a guy who's a front runner for the AL Cy Young Award. There's a bunch of names that everybody was calling as, not prohibitive, but high-end favorites to win this, the Rookie of the Year award coming this season. And all of a sudden, you've got all those same names, and Heel is blowing past them. So the fact that you've got this guy right now, and they did one of those, I don't remember if it was executive polls or manager polls or what it was, but they polled people around MLB anonymously like 2 weeks ago. And he had for who should start the All-Star game, he had, I believe it was 27% in terms of the support from those anonymous people around MLB in terms of who should start for the American League in the All-Star game. The next pitcher was at 6%. So he had more than 4 times that level. And I think that's just a testament of how great he's been. I mean, today was considered, he started today, and he got through 6 innings, allowing 3 earned runs, and that was considered a down start for him. Like, I was seeing people on social media, which, my God, New York sports social media is the most toxic cesspool I can imagine. But be that as it may, I was seeing, people talking about how they were torching him for doubles left and right. If your game of being torched left and right for doubles is keeping the team who is considered the NL favorite to 3 runs in 6 innings and having New York stay in the game to the point where they're able to get that comeback home run and take the lead at the end of the 6th, if that's your down game, then I want you in my rotation, and I want you in my rotation for a long time. I want you going up against some of those, those guys who have been, wringing our necks the last few years in the, in the wake of, the Luis Castillos and the Justin Verlanders and guys of that nature. Scoops in the house. Mr. Dutchy, Albert Knoppers in the house. How you doing, sir? Glad to have you here. Appreciate you coming in tonight. Hope you and your family have had a nice weekend and a great week. And excuse me, sorry. Insert your Alexander Madison jokes here, since I'm not able to originate one right now. But pardon me. But yeah, no, I was seeing this past week, I was seeing people say that, they should either not necessarily that they should, but that they might load manage with Luis Heel, or they might send him to the bullpen, or they might, limit his innings this year, which if they want to limit his innings, then it's one thing to do that by like saying, okay, we're going to limit his pitch count to 85 pitches to start or somewhere around there. I mean, again, I agree with pitching limits in some respects, but I also, again, this is where I kind of have that balance of you got to have the numbers and you got to, have your instincts. Because yeah, I agree with the fact that if you generally want to keep a guy at 85 pitches, you shouldn't necessarily let him throw 120. But if a guy's at 85 pitches and he's dealing, I don't mind trying to see if he can get through one more batter. And if he's not giving up super hard contact, maybe try and push him to one more. I think that those you should have that information as a guide, but you're still a human with a brain as well. So it's like, I think you incorporate both those things. The numbers don't lie, but also there's a time and a place for everything. Do you know how many Alexander Madison jokes there are? No, I don't, because most of my time I'm spending at football jokes is at jokes about the Dallas Cowboys. So no, I do not. Unless he ends up signing with the Dallas Cowboys, and then I'll probably develop a good number of them in a short period of time. Ironically, the Dallas Cowboys themselves have been a joke since they let go of Jimmy Johnson. But be that as it may, none is such. I need to get Mr. Dutchy back on this show. Oh my God, and I'll use this time to plug the 4 Horsemen over at Denver Bronco Roundup on Tuesday and Friday evenings. Again, as I say, their show, you don't have to be a Denver Broncos fan to enjoy their show. Just their knowledge, their the creativity over there, and just the humor of it all. There's always somebody who something that somebody can enjoy no matter what of their level of football and Denver Bronco knowledge and connection is over there. And of course, we've got so many shows over on the K&K network as well. So I'll plug those at the end as well. But but no, and going back and talking about I talked about Heel for a little bit, and validly so. But I do think that this is going to be a rare, I think, situation right now is going to, we're looking at the next, it's going to be a little under 2 months now, looking at the lead up to the trade deadline. And I've followed the trade deadline since I was 11 years old, which was the 2012 trade deadline when the Yankees traded for Ichiro. So I followed the trade deadline for the past 12 years. This might be the first trade deadline where I can remember thinking that, again, a lot of things can change in the next 6 weeks. As I sit here right now, I'm not sure if I want the Yankees to make a move at the deadline. I'm not sure I want them to, with what they have. Again, this is assuming that Soto comes back and that, that issue doesn't, continue to spiral out of control. But if we get back, Garrett Cole, and we've got that rotation right there, we're already going to be kicking a very well contributing and a very capable starter out of the rotation into the bullpen or to the minor leagues to begin with. The bullpen has not been an issue. Clay Holmes has been a shutdown closer to start the season. He's been up there with the best of them. They are the one thing that New York does not seem to have an issue with usually is cranking out relief pitchers or picking up relief pitchers off of the 99-cent bin and turning them into all-stars. And the few positions where I could see them needing to add somebody, excuse me, where I could see them needing to add somebody, they've got their own guys they'll be plugging in. Like I said, Cole's going to be coming back. Jason Dominguez is going to be coming back, as Kenny just mentioned down here. He's going to be coming back. And then even if you want to look at, other positions, like, the middle infield, they've got prospects down there. We're going to be getting Oswald Peraza back. I was confused the two. We're going to be getting Oswald Peraza back. So it's like, this is probably the first year where, as of right now, again, this is June 9th, so a lot can change in 6 weeks. This is probably the first year where I can think I will be perfectly happy if the buzzer comes and goes on, I think it's August 2nd this year, and they don't do a damn thing. Because if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Don't just make. This is where the one area where I differ from Yankees fans, like if you want to call it the average Yankees fan. I'm not trying to make a move for making a move's sake, because, and they don't want to hear this, but for every move you make, you have to give something up. Now, again, I understand that a guy who's going to be around in 2027 or 2028 shouldn't be the difference between you getting a guy who can be the difference maker for you this year. I think the biggest difference makers they can have are already wearing pinstripes, or at least on the IL. Where does Dominguez play when added to the roster? This is going to create an interesting conundrum, I think, because for me, I'm not sending Dominguez back down to the minor leagues. And as such, they've already got, I think Verdugo has played, I initially was going to say to let go of Verdugo, but he's really come around for me in recent weeks. And again, when I'm wrong, I'm wrong. When he's really come around for me in recent weeks. In fact, it's not really baseball related at all, but he did a happy birthday message to his mom on the Jumbotron today. Like, how the fans can put up messages on the Jumbotron. He did one himself for his mom, which I thought was really sweet. But yeah, so it would have been Verdugo. I don't think he's going anywhere. In my mind, you don't make Dominguez a DH because I think his value in the field is too great. I hate that I'm thinking about this, but I'm almost kind of wondering, do you make one of two things? Do you either make Soto a long-term DH and just eat it with Stanton and just let him go? Or do you do that with Rizzo and teach Soto how to play first base some of the time? And both of those sound insane to say out loud, but it's just, I'm not putting Dominguez in the minor leagues. I'm sick and tired of these guys coming up who are top prospects. I did this with Peraza last year or 2 years ago. I'm sick and tired of these guys coming up as top prospects, and then they're not getting playing time. What the hell do you hold on to these guys for and keep them out of trades if you're not going to play them? So, yeah, those are probably my two options. And I hate saying that, especially about Rizzo, because he's probably one of my two favorite players on the Yankees. But if he doesn't pick it up with his production, both in the field and if he were at least being, the Gold Glove first baseman that we're used to, I could at least make the argument there because of what he does, what he is in the clubhouse. But I think those are two scenarios you really have to consider: is either turning Soto into a long-term DH and then 86ing Stanton, or on the other side, teaching Soto how to play first base. I sound like the Scott Hatteberg conversation from Moneyball when I say that. But teaching Soto how to play first base and then, moving off of Rizzo, because I again, I hate the idea of Dominguez staying at AAA when he's very clearly ready to be in the major leagues. Now, again, in the beginning, because he hasn't played for so long, if they start with him in the minors for a little bit, I can maybe understand that because, again, he's had such a long layoff and he only had a couple games of major league experience before he got that injury that needed Tommy John. So if that's the case, but it better not be for that long. And if it's for any time at all, it better conclude at least no later than September 1st. And I think is extensive. But yeah, no, I'm really having a hard time with seeing any scenario that doesn't involve one of those three outcomes, which is, like I said, either Dominguez not staying in the majors, which I don't like, or one of those two, Stanton or Rizzo being let go. Which again, I would hate to see, but at least we can't say New York is adverse to eating money and letting players go. They did it with A-Rod. They did it with Aaron Hicks. They did it with I think they did it with Josh Donaldson. And I'm pretty sure I'm forgetting people. Dominguez needs to be on the roster. Stanton can stay on the bench or release him. DH Soto and Judge to keep him fresh. Yeah, I like the idea. I prefer the idea of keeping DH not locked with one player and having that as like a revolving door to keep guys partially rested, which is why I never loved the fact that was how they often used Stanton was as a full-time DH, because I thought he actually played better when he was in the field. So I never loved that they didn't try to, spend more time with him in left field, because it was clear they were never going to try and have Judge in left field. And when they did it for one of the few times a few days ago, and it looked freaking ugly. So I don't think that was necessarily the way that I would have handled things if I were running the Yankees. I would have definitely tried to keep him in the field more. And people say, well, he might have gotten injured more that way. But if that's the case, then then that should have been what the numbers bore out. But his production, analytically speaking, was better when he was playing the field. Scoop, staying on the Yankees, are there any concerns of Luis Gil's second half of the season and any innings pitched they may fatigue? Right. So I made a little bit of an allusion to that. No, not technical issues again. Sorry, there's a glitch here. I'm just trying to make sure that I don't lose my feed. No. I apologize, y'all. I don't know what's going on today. Crumb cake. Okay. Thank you, Kenny. I appreciate it. Are we okay? We are. So picking up where we left off, the question was about Luis Gil, and as I had started to allude to before, he is just not. He's gotten to a point this season. Again, I know when guys sometimes start hot, then sometimes you're like, oh, I want to be careful with him. I don't want to. This is not a year where you can be afraid of what's going to happen 5 years down the road with this guy. Again, from a personal health standpoint, I understand you got to think of the guy, from a personal standpoint as well. But I mean, when you're talking about a guy who, as I mentioned earlier, is pretty consistently looked at as a guy who's going to be a a front runner to not only get the NL or the AL Rookie of the Year this season if he continues this way, but also somebody who's being strongly talked about and favored to start the American League side for the All-Star game. When you're looking at something like that, I'm sorry, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. You don't mess with something like that. Again, like I said before, if you want to put him on maybe like a pitch count type of thing, where you're saying, around 85 pitches will pull him, or around 90 pitches will pull him, or something like that per start. But if you just get to September and then you suddenly say we're shutting him down for the rest of the season, no, September and October are when you need these guys most. I wouldn't really love that, and what he's done in the minors a little bit. He's never broken 100 innings pitched in the minor leagues. So I will, that is something I'll have to keep an eye on. But, excuse me, I mean, he's already this season, as soon as he starts one more game, he's going to be at the second most he's ever pitched in a season behind 2019. So he's already going to break that record this year and probably break it pretty handily. I'm not all that comfortable with the idea of trying to just suddenly say, okay, we're going to pull this guy arbitrarily because we don't like him going beyond this number throughout the entire season. Again, if you want to make it start by start, maybe I could get behind that, but I'd really dislike it if I saw them just random, because they did that a couple of years ago with I don't know if it was Severino or who it was, but there was some pitcher who was doing fantastic throughout the course of the season, and they just decided to just pull the trigger on his season, and I was just, and it made no sense to me. You got to have both. I think you got to look at things from 30,000 feet, from a more analytical perspective, and then you also got to factor in with that what's going on, right in front of you, and what's going on with the day to day. And right now, you don't want to mess up with this momentum with Heel. With what he did even today with the Dodgers, I mean, like I mentioned, this was considered sort of a down start for him with against the Dodgers today, and his so-called down start was 5 2/3 innings, allowing 5 hits, 3 earned runs, striking out 5, and walking only 1. So if that's the worst start he makes this season, this is a guy who's going to not just get AL starting consideration for the All-Star game and not just get Rookie of the Year consideration. He's going to get Cy Young and perhaps MVP consideration at that level, is provided New York continues on the level that they are. So with all those factors tying in, yeah, I just can't see it. Blame it on the solar flares, Kenny. They cause all kinds of technological problems. You would know far more about that than I would. I don't know what's going on tonight. This is definitely the worst that it's been. So thank y'all who have sort of stuck around and who have continued to sort of navigate with me, and also for, of course, for the help behind the scenes that I've gotten from, Kenny and Trevor and everybody. So appreciate sticking with us as we navigate whatever's going on here. And I will update on that game as I said I would. It's a 6-4 game right now in the top of the 9th. Yankees looking to try and close down the Dodgers and take this game after that home run by Grisham. And then I haven't talked about the NHL yet, but I'll briefly touch on what's going on over there regarding the NHL finals, because the Florida Panthers, as I mentioned, had not stolen. I don't mean that literally, but they had taken game 1. Game 2 is tomorrow in Florida again, and the Oilers are going to be looking to match that up. They had, 32 saves from Bobrovsky. The Panthers shut them down 3-0 in game 1. So now there's some considerations as to how to reconsider some of the defense on the side of Edmonton, and sort of how those lines are going to look going into game 2. And then from a more media-based standpoint, the Stanley Cup final game 1 this year was up from 12% last year in terms of viewing, but from the last ABC broadcast, it was down 26%. So sort of an up and down talking there. I don't watch much hockey, but I know a good goalie when I see one. Bobrovsky, wow. Again, like you said, I don't watch a ton of hockey. It's definitely my number 4 sport, but no, he was remarkably impressive. And yeah, I got that question from, I think it was either from Nicole, or it was at least during the show that Nicole was on a few weeks ago. And it was, who is one guy from the playoffs that you would steal for your team, which is my team's the Flyers. Definitely would have Bobrovsky in that conversation now, since ever since the whole saga with Carter Hart. They definitely are at a loss back there, and in need of a significant upgrade. So excuse me. So that's what's going on in the NHL. 1-0 series lead for Florida. And then, as I said, I would give you guys an update on the Celtics-Mavs game. It's a little bit more of a Celtics lead now, as we close in on the end of the third quarter. They've outscored the Mavs by 10 this quarter. It's currently 80-67. And the leading scorers on Dallas continue to be Doncic and Irving, but PJ Washington's come in with 9 points of his own. But man, the again, just the sharing the rock that's going on with Boston today is just really impressive to me. Holiday's got 23, but Tatum, Brown, White, and Porzingis all have double-digit points, which very much love seeing when that happens. I don't watch soccer much, but I knew an excellent goalie, me. Not so much anymore now. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I don't watch a ton of soccer. I mean, I'm the guy who constantly gets ridiculed because even when the USA is in the World Cup, I'm not someone who's super into it. I do obviously root for USA whenever they're playing in anything competitively sports-wise, but soccer is the hardest game for me to continually and consistently watch. I follow the EPL. I follow the Newcastle United, but in terms of actually watching games consistently, it's never something I've been able to really get into. But that's cool that you played goalie. I didn't knew that. I actually don't know if I knew that you played soccer at all. But appreciate you sharing that. That's interesting. Excuse me. We've got a soccer team over here that I've gone to see a couple times when I was a lot younger, and then there's also the New York Red Bulls. I know a lot of the people that I graduated with who since left the tri-state area have stayed on as Red Bulls fans, or at least will go to Red Bulls games and such. I don't think I ever made it to one while I was down there, but I know that was growing and becoming a big thing down there for people who even weren't like the biggest fans of the soccer or soccer sport in general. But excuse me. Obviously, I know that's not to the level of guys of places like EPL and La Liga and such. But the I can say that the Yankees game has gone final. The 6-4 victory for New York avoids the sweep against the Dodgers. So that series ends 2-1. And considering that first game could have gone either way in the bottom of the 11th inning, I'm honestly, Yankees fans are probably not going to largely agree with me on this. I'm not too mad about this series at all. Taking this game and that other one, game one being a coin flip, yesterday should not have gotten out of hand the way that it did. But once we get Soto back, and like we talked about earlier with some of the reinforcements, this is a series I could really get behind seeing in late October. Mr. Dutchy says, I totally agree. It is so boring to watch soccer. Playing soccer is a completely different thing than watching it. That's how I feel about not soccer, but that's how I feel about golf. I enjoy playing golf. It's something that I played when I was very young, and I continued to. I played in high school for our school team. I was like, I think it was considered co-captain for our JV team. I think it was, or modified. I can't remember which of the two. But we had a lot of fun doing that, and I continued to play afterward. And I've still got my golf clubs, but that's similar for me, as I cannot watch golf on TV for the life of me. My father watches it. He used to watch it a ton. I don't know if he still does, but he used to watch it a ton. And I've tried, but you're putting me on 7 different shots in 4 minutes, 7 different players on, each on a different hole. It's just like, I get so confused. And trying to keep track of 200 players, especially more before they make the cut. Yeah, I love playing golf, but that is similarly a sport for me that I just cannot watch for the life of me. I've tried several times. The last time I remember watching one with anything close was when Tiger was making his big comeback a few years ago. I wasn't really rooting for Tiger, but again, it was the sort of good story for sports that he ended up back on top when he did. So there's that. Excuse me. Oh, it's the same comment. But no, I think going into before the show ends, since I mentioned DBR earlier, I did want to remind everybody when they have the opportunity to go and watch all the shows on the K&K side of things. Obviously, you got the main show on Wednesday nights. Believe it's still at pretty sure it's still at 8 p.m. But correct me if I'm wrong on that, please. And then of course they've got their the Clams and Claws show. Wits and Wagers will be back. I know it's not on right now, but it will be back. They've got their New York Giants talk show. Of course, Kurt after after the Wednesday night show, Kurt does his Let's Talk Broncos, which is always, I mean, you know how Kurt gets when it comes to literally anything when it comes to sport. He reminds me a little bit of Michael Jordan in the fact that he will make up something to fire himself up. Because there was that story about Michael Jordan where he was basically said that this player said to him, "Nice game, Mike," and he was just like, "No, I just made it up to like fuel myself." I think that's what Kurt does sometimes. I think he makes stuff up in sports just to get himself fired up for these shows, or just to get himself fired up, and then it comes out on these shows. But it's just so funny to me because when I watch The Last Dance and they tell that story, I'm like, that reminds me a lot of what Kurt does. But that's always great entertainment, as y'all know. And I'm still hoping that one of these days we'll be able to have him on WTS over here. And then, like I said, constantly adding new shows and tweaking over there. They're always trying to find creative new ways to do things. I definitely encourage, specifically going back a couple weeks and looking at their New York Giants show where they did this. I think it was called This Old House or Home Improvement, but they basically turned the New York Giants offseason into sort of the rebuilding of a house. I'm no one will ever confuse me for a New York Giants fan, but that segment, I could rewatch that show time and time again. It was so well done and so fascinating and a lot of fun. That being said, even though the clock is a little bit changed in terms of duration, we are coming at the buzzer right now. Guys, so I just want to say, for those who are still watching, I just want to say both thank you and I apologize for everything that was transpiring with the technical issues. And again, thank you so much to Kenny, and I think Trevor was here, and everybody else who was helping out behind the scenes, and kind of people who were sort of jumping around to different places and staying along with us with all the chaos and such. And of course, to everybody who came on and asked fantastic questions, had a lot of great dialogue with some of the usual people, and then we had people jump on Mr. Dutchy and Jess and everybody. So just thank y'all so much for all of that. Trevor, great show, Scoops. Sorry I caught the show late. Good to see Mancy Swift. Trevor, no, it's always the show always is improved, no matter whether you're able to catch the whole thing or just a little. The show is always improved when you join, bro. And really appreciate that. And thanks again for all of your help. And same to Kenny as well. And guys, as I always say, as I'm closing off, Thursday night now, 9 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Mountain. Catch me over on Settle the Scores, supported by the Rocky Mountain Sports Network. And of course, come back next Sunday night for 9 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Mountain. What's the Scoop? Episode 29. Same Scoop time, same Scoop channel. Scoop out.